What's going on, guys? Mitch here, and today, special day. We got another Shirogorov on the channel, this time a Quantum. So this guy was recently launched, or sorry, I shouldn't say it was recently launched. I think it's been recently launched, simply because it's a price point knife. And, you know, before we get into this, you know, you're talking about a price point knife that is from a manufacturer that does not do price point things. So you're not going to convince me that this knife, for one, is not worth it, because I bought this. And number two, you can already get terrific knives for a price point that's beneath this, okay? I'm not going to deny that fact. I'm going to tell you right now, before we get started. So if this is like a, hey, I want to, this video is about describing the value that I'm going to get from this knife. No, that's not what this guy is about. What it will be about is showing you what 600 bucks from Shirogorov gets you compared to a bunch of other things, and whether or not, if I think, they tick the boxes on that. So let's get into it. So before we go into anything, I always like to do the measurements. Shiros are big. This is a large knife. And let's see what we got here. Almost 9 inches, is that right? Yeah, 8 and 3/4, somewhere in that conversation. And also, as a reminder as well, these are fireside conversations, as if a buddy's over and we're just chatting knives. So this is not going to be littered with specs. As I mentioned, the length of the blade is 4 inches, I think. Yeah, damn near 4 inches, maybe a bit less. So let's get into this. Let's talk about this knife. Let's waste 20 minutes of your time here, because that's what this is all about. So a couple backgrounds on Shiros. So typically they've got kind of their couple different series lines. So Neon, small; Quantum, big; and 95s are kind of bigger as well. So they've kind of got small and large. Now their small is a medium for something like a Chris Reeves, and their large is bigger than most larges. So they're bigger knives. They're Russian, which is, I guess, the reason why they have that little cool bear on the blade. Hopefully you can see that, and the light picks that up. Super cool. I guess bears are a big Russian thing. So if it was Canadian, maybe it'd be a beaver. Anyway. So what makes this a $600 knife versus some of their other ones that are $625, $650, $750, $1,000, $1,100. Couple things that we need to talk about with Shirogorov before we go in. So first and foremost, yes, this is a budget-ish knife, okay? No, it is not made at a budget knife quality price point level, in that everything on this is at the same tolerances as some of their high-end blades. Okay, so if you look at this under a microscope, as I've seen some people talk about, it is an exceptional quality knife. Every little detail, it's fussed over, everything. And we'll talk about this. I'm hoping you'll leave this conversation with an understanding of Shirogorov, and quite frankly, be interested in trying out a Shirogorov. And if you are interested in trying out a Shirogorov, logically, this is probably the knife, or maybe another Quantum, that I would be looking at. So how do they get to that? How do they take this manufacturing Russian machine and with such high quality and pump out a $600 price point knife, right? Like you're at a Chris Reeve price point, but you got a G10 handle. So that's first and foremost. G10 handle, which is glorified plastic, heavy use plastic, and they've done a great job of that. And I'll try to show some light on this if the camera wants to focus and cooperate, but you should be able to see there's lots of machine work on the plastic. It's just really well done. It's not, they didn't kind of skimp and cut corners and slam a piece of plastic on there that just looks silly. They've gone over it just like they would their titanium. So they've done all the milling on it. And honestly, I'm trying to look here on the camera to see if I'm showing this right. There we go. Just look at that. Look at the quality on the milling on the handle and how every little detail is just so nice and so sharply done. There's light reflecting there. Hopefully you can see that, guys. I apologize if not, but it's a black knife. We're shooting this with sunlight, so it's a little difficult. So anyway, G10 handle instead of titanium on a lot of their other models. On this one, however, this is another differentiator. The bearing system in the pivot, okay? A lot of their typically lower end knives, not lower end, but more price point, I should say, on Shirogorov, there's no such thing as low end. It's like you're starting at the high end already. So the lower end of the high end, they use single row bearings. And think of it as like a normal bearing setup. It's like a washer with bearings in it, around in a circle. That's their standard bearing, which most knife companies would classify as their standard bearing. Like if you have bearings in a knife, it would look like their single row bearings, okay? Now, when you go into their multi-row bearing system, which is found in this, and you'll actually, I'll show you where it's written on here, but when you go into their multi-row bearing system, it's considered feel-wise an upgrade. And some people think that it is an upgrade. I'm going to tell you this. Both feel fantastic. And if you blindfolded me and asked me with 50 different knives set up single row bearing and multi-row bearing, which is which, I think I would struggle, because the feel is really not that different between the two. And I would argue the single row has less friction because there's less movement, right? And you're still going on a titanium surface on at least one side. So it's just really cool. And multi-row bearings are awesome. Single row bearings are real cool. And then from there, they go into the custom divisions, they get into roller bearings, which is a whole other conversation. But in this conversation, we're not going to even address that, okay? So back to my main point here. Typically, single row bearings are their budget end. Multi-row bearings are found on their kind of mid-level and up production pieces. This guy comes with multi-row bearings. Okay, the fancy Shirogorov Quantium monkey edge frag that I recently did a video on, that guy came with single row bearings. Okay, and here's that knife for reference. Same knife. Okay, this guy is single row and actually costs more money, but then again, it also has limited run and it's a titanium scale on this side versus G10. So when you start getting into this price point of like, do you want titanium or do you want G10? Do you want single row bearing or do you want multi-row bearing? The winner here would be, titanium handle all day with the multi-row bearing. Well, they have that knife, okay? They made that knife. It is available and it is more money, lo and behold. And it is called the Quantum, okay? Quantum, not Ursus, what do they call this guy? This is the Quantum Ursus. I think this is just the Quantum Gen 4 or something. So when you talk price points, you start looking at, okay, you want G10, you want titanium. How do you keep the cost down on titanium? You put a single row bearing in it. How do you add value to G10? You put a multi-row bearing in it. How do you do both well? Well, you do this knife. And this one is not cheap. This one is, I think $1050 US versus 600 versus 725. Now there is another knife in this series that's between this, and it is a single row titanium inlay that would kind of fit right in between here, 625. And I'm trying to track that one down. That's they're not super readily available, but working on a deal there. So at some point I'll have that, but just to kind of give you an idea, right? $600, $2,000, in the middle is this. You can't have it all unless you go to the high end. This will come with a host of other features as well, if you compare. So look at the pivot size, right? Big difference there. The machine work, huge difference there. On the back side, You've got, just look at the difference there. All the machine work, all the milling on the Quantum versus the Ursus. It's just a little stick-on, right? And there's nothing wrong with this. I'm just saying you're looking at details that are significantly different. And more details means more price points. Okay? From the blade shape perspective on the Quantum line, they're all the same. They're all very similar. If you want to get into the nitty-gritty, yes, there's a difference between these guys. You have a bear on one. I believe the stock on them is all the same. Yep, jimping's a little different on the top there as well. But for the most part, very similar. If I'm comparing two knives, I'd be comparing this and this. I wouldn't even be bringing the big bad boy into the conversation because it's not fair. It's not a fair fight. It's almost twice the price. And with twice the price comes, lo and behold, twice the value. And that's just a different conversation. So we're not going to really go there. We're not going to compare the two because I'm telling you, you'll start with one of these, and before you know it, you'll have multiple ones of these. They are that good, okay? So we'll leave those off. Get back to the Ursus, if that's how you pronounce it. So G10 multi-roll bearing system, which is such a sweet value add. I love that. It's obviously a flipper. And I'm going to throw a mic on the, hopefully you can hear this, okay? Sorry, it just hit my hand. See if I can just leave that down. So let's listen to the flick. It's just such a good sounding knife. Such a good feeling knife in the hand. It's just, the detail work is exceptional. I will say this as well. Just going to zoom the camera out a little bit here. I will say this as well. One thing that I really do love about the back of the knife and how that they have this this inlay, if you want to call it that. It's, to me, when it's in your hand and you're not looking at it, it's where your hand will naturally fall. And when you know you're on that, you're not going to be pushing on the folding frame. So as you know, when it is a flipper and when you push on the frame, it adds resistance when you're trying to flip it. So how can I illustrate this without sounding stupid? So if I'm squeezing the knife right here on the lock bar, if I'm squeezing this, just even the top, and I try to hit the flipper tab, like it will not open, right? Because I'm adding pressure to a feature that keeps the blade in the handle. Okay? The way they get around that is with this little pocket clip, which is so cool. So the pocket clip, if you look at it, it has a little piece that leans onto the top of the frame. But the pocket clip is actually overlapping both sides. So typically most knives, when you push down on the pocket clip, it will push onto the lock bar as well. So if you're squeezing it in your hand, trying to fire it out, right, it won't let you. So how do we do it? Well, you put that pocket clip with a little machining and you put that, angle it onto this side, which is brilliant. And that's across the board on all the Shiros. All right, they all do that little pocket clippy thing. It's a very smooth and smart design, smooth and smart, and it just makes sense. So, ergo-wise, when it's in your hand, and if you're putting any pressure on the pocket clip, you know that it's not pushing onto that lock bar. So when I'm not looking and I've got it in my hand like this, and I want to fire it out, I can feel that my little fingers tend to go on top of the pocket clip, which if I'm pushing on it is not adding any weight to the frame lock or the blade. And then my top finger just goes onto the nice little tab on the top there, and it's just so smart and intuitive. And it's so hard to explain these things without handling this. If I put this in your hand and said hold the knife and squeeze the knife and try to fire it out, you know exactly what I'm talking about right away. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. Is just when it's in your hand and you feel that like little inlay, it's smart because you don't have to be looking at it to know you're not putting weight on the lock bar. Beautiful lockup as well. Very light. You know, I'd put that in 15%. And the design of that doesn't show that very well. It's very solid. Some people are going to complain about that. But it is very, very light. And it's a good feel in hand. Very smooth. Real nice. Now, in terms of ergonomics of the Quantum line itself, they're all very similar. If we look at the top, right? All very, very similar. The tab is all in the same place. Maybe I should move these so you actually see what the heck I'm talking about instead of me just blabbing on. So the Quantum is the design. It's the ergonomics of it, right? So if you look at the design, they're all very similar. They all have the little flicker at the same spot, which now that I know, it's to me feels designed more around a larger hand, which I'll talk about here shortly. But bigger hands are going to like this knife, certainly, when we start comparing it to the F95s. Which, you know what, while I'm on the topic, because I have your interest, why don't we do that right now? So let's go grab an F95, which is hiding somewhere here. There's the F95, there we go. And you know, I'll grab this one too. So when we compare it with the Zero and the F95T, you'll notice, see how on the top with the tab, it's a very similar overall length of the knives, but the flipper tab is moved back in the frame. So let's see if I can show that. See what I'm talking about? How the tab is not right at the tip like this on the Quantum. It's moved back a little bit. So when you've got a big hand versus a little bit smaller hand, I prefer the 95 myself, but both are fantastic. It's not a limiting factor for me. They all sound amazing. They all feel amazing. Oh God, this is just something you guys need to see and feel for yourselves to truly understand. Size-wise, I will show this compared to the smaller Neon, which you know, I think a lot of people want to see the difference. So I will find that here. Then maybe I'll fire that out a couple times to show you the sound. It's nice. It's definitely a different feel, definitely a different sound. But you know, if I was going to say which one would I want as my EDC, say in a suit jacket, it'd be this guy. You know, everyday carry going to weekend stuff, it'd be this guy. Very, you know, Shiros are very thin, have a very small form factor for such big blades. But yeah, the Neon's definitely a great little in-between. Now, if we kind of compare this up against some standard knives that I like to kind of compare it with, you know, bug out. It's going to be in that conversation, right? Everyone's got a bug out. Everyone has an idea of how big a bug out is. If we compare it with, I wouldn't even do that. Let's just do a Sebenza, which is hiding somewhere in my little kit here. Sebenza 31, right? There's your Sebenza 31. So it's kind of Sebenza large 31. So as you can kind of see, you know, it's definitely smaller than this guy, but if we go into like a small Sebenza, you'll see what I'm saying. There's your small. So, you know, I'd kind of say the Neon is definitely kind of a mid-size versus these other guys, right? Yeah, they say they're small, but like look at the difference. It's right in between a small and a large, and that's why I figure that this is kind of a large plus, and this is like a small minus on the Neon anyway. Now the neon's a whole other conversation that we have to have, and we'll talk more about that because I believe this guy actually has multi-row bearings too. I think it's around 500 bucks. Super good value on this tie frame, and this is why I say that knife, remember at the start, that is in between a couple of these. There's a Quantum just like this for $650. So 50 bucks more, and you get a tie top with instead of the G10, but you get single row bearings on that instead of multi-row bearings like on this little guy. So that is what it is. If we look at ergos on it, I like it. I think the hand, it fits the hand beautifully. I love the jimping. You know, a few guys say if the knife fits your hand right, you don't need jimping, and I believe that. But it sure is nice to have for when you're not holding it in an optimal position. On the, I was talking lock bar, it's got a very light lockup. Shiros will literally drop shut. It's not like a guillotine, but they certainly drop shut like in a perfect. Like this is what people dream of, you know, and when, you know, the opposite of having bad dreams, people have dreams of this at night, just like listen. Oh, this is G10, guys. How good does that sound? Isn't that incredible? Oh, you can't beat that Shiro sound and feel. It's just like, it's like guillotine, but like totally controlled. You can't beat that. Originally when I first started flicking in Quantum, you definitely notice some of the angles here and kind of what they're trying to accomplish in that at the tip, they're kind of lining up the way the flipper tab is. Instead of pushing down on it, they're really trying to show you that you've got to pull back with your finger, which is the whole point of it, right? It's more of a light switch style versus a bumper style or a push down. So I definitely dig that. Blade's super sharp. I've obviously got a few marks on the pocket clip that I was talking about earlier just because I've carried this a few times. It's been a bit of a workhorse for me. Just carry it, try it out, try to get the fit and feel on it. After I got the Monkey's Edge, I didn't want to carry this guy just because I think it's going to be worth something one day and try to keep it mint. But, you know, as things change here, I may end up carrying it because it's just, it's so good. I love Shiros, in case you can't tell. Another thing we talked about, you know, the fit and finish on G10 versus tie. It's clearly evident when you go all around the knife, all the same attention to detail. It's all milled nicely. In fact, if you look at this side of the frame and compare it with the Monkey's Edge version, you know, there's not a whole lot of difference here. Same build quality. It's on the show side it's different, but on this side it's almost identical, which a lot of people are going to like because, you know, it has to maintain that Shiro feel, which I definitely think it does. Hardware is all good. It's very basic to take apart. You know, it's not universal. You know, proprietary tool required. It's a flathead screwdriver or a credit card or a penny. You can get this thing apart pretty easily. It does have the removable lock bar material in there if that bugged you and you wanted to wear it out over time. You certainly can. But ergonomically on this, it's just such a beautiful thing. Like, you guys, I wish you could just hold this in your hand and feel it. Like, all the angling on the millwork, all the lock bar, how it's all rolled here. It's nice, and like there's no cutting points in here. You're not going to do anything like that. It's just so well done. Smooth. Attention to detail is just so thorough and so much. Oh, like this is to me like, you know, that's your Tarmac SL7, right? But then you get into these guys, and these are like your S-Works. Like, they have the same ride quality, the same feel, but it's just at another level of detail. It's just, I can see why they sell probably 10 to 1. Super popular. Love the little bear. Something that we haven't really talked about is the Chromax PM. PM, I believe, is powdered metal. And I think, I'm not a metal guy, but I know that it is a step up from LMAX. And it just a little refresh, like it's LMAX on steroids, but like just like a sprinkling of steroids, just the right amount. Like, you know, if you're just looking to build some muscles and you want a little steroids to bulk up, well, that's all you need. Chromax PM. It's, you know, in the grand scale, is it like a 390? No. But boy, is it good. Boy, is it awesome. So there's that. A couple other little details. So the pocket clip, and I'm just going to move around the camera here so I can show this. So the pocket clip is great. I've talked about how it's overlapping the frame. That's just brilliantly done. The inlays, also brilliantly done. You can get this guy, I believe, in the black G10 as well as green, like an army green kind of color. And you're not going to be complaining with that. You've got real nice lockup, good feel. The bearings break in. That's the one thing I'll say with multi-row bearings. They do take a little flicking, maybe 100 or a couple hundred, just to kind of break in and get rid of a feeling that kind of it sounds and feels a little metal on metal, but it's got to break in, spread the grease around. It has a pocket clip because, once again, it seems like Shiro really likes putting pocket clips on stuff, or access to put on a little lanyard hole. Why am I calling it a pocket clip? Sorry. So if you want to put on a lanyard, you certainly can. That's not going to be a problem if you're into that. Personally, I'm not. I've said that in a number of videos, and that's just me. It's just me being me. But hey, it's not about me sometimes. It's about you guys watching this stuff. Obviously, dead center. Not surprised. All the Shiros, they're going to be dead center. And hardware-wise, I already talked about that. Tab-wise, it's got a nice little landing zone for your finger in there as well. So when you fire this guy out, you know, they look at the little details. Where's your finger going to go when you pull back? It's going to go right into that little spot there. Right? Pull back. It's nice and smoothed out. Just well thought out little details. And these are details that are on a lot of their knives. This isn't unique to this. This is just an entry point to help people understand why do you spend, you know, $1,000 on a beautiful Shirogorov when you can get a Chris Reeves for $600? Well, let's give you a knife that's $600 that will help you understand what we bring to the table. And what they bring to the table is it's a better blade. Higher tolerances, better fit and finish, lower numbers produced, and a bear. Who doesn't like a bear? So now, if you think these are expensive when you go into the full metals, all right, they also have a custom division. And when you go into custom division knives, you're at price points that are used cars. And they're, you know, I've seen them $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And it would take a knife like these and make them feel like garbage. They would feel like garbage. You'd compare the two and you'd be like, oh my goodness, 10 times the price, hey? And there's still room to go on fit and finish? You're kidding me. It's safe to say I don't think I'll ever own any of those knives because I can't rationally justify it unless Shirogorov is watching this and saying, hey, yeah, we'll lend you one and try it out. I would love it. Would absolutely love it. I just think it would be very difficult for me to justify that kind of commitment. You know, I'd have to sell 10 knives for one, and hey, I may get there. Here I am trying to say to the guys, try out a G10, $600, and you'll get into $1,000 and you'll understand it. And I'm talking and preaching to you guys that. But, you know, 10 times the price from this gorgeous F95T, like, are you kidding me? How much better can it get? Oh, it's got roller bearings. Oh, it's tighter fitting. It's this, that. It's like, okay, well, I'd love to try it. I don't know the difference. But it would be certainly cool. I'm not going to lie. I would absolutely love to try it. So, yeah. Sorry, my OCD is just trying to get to me here. Otherwise on this guy, I'm trying to think what else you guys would want to see and what else you'd want to talk about. You know, it's an absolutely terrific blade, highly recommended. For the price point, you're getting a lot of Shirogorov value. The only thing that I think you're not getting is a metal titanium handle. Because to me, that separates all these knives here is that plastic handle. And I would be lying if I was telling you that that is not a significant feel to the knife in the weight of it, the balance of it. Sorry, the weight and balance of it, and just the overall feel of having that in your hand. It's such a significant factor to me, which is why that, you know, would I take multi-row bearings in plastic over single row bearings in tie? I don't think I would. I think I'd take single row bearings in tie for another 25 bucks. And I'd want to try that knife because I think it would feel better in the hand. So it's going to feel the same. It's going to give you weight in the hand, and it's going to give you fit and finish that you'll understand the titanium side. The shame is that it's got that stupid micarta inlay that looks like this. That's ridiculous to me, which is why I want a Neon Zero, which is this, but in that size. And that's a whole other conversation. But you know what, if it's your first taste of Shirogorov, you're not going to go wrong. You're not going to feel disappointed. You're just going to get it and be like, okay, so that's what 600 bucks is, eh? Well, I want to try 650, I want to try 700, I want to try $1,000. And before you know it, you're saying, Mitch, you know what, I just need to remortgage my house because I want a couple of their custom division knives and some F3NSs, and yeah, I need those things to feel good about myself again. And also I need to stock up on Band-Aids because they are violently sharp. I can feel, I'll tell you this right now, I can feel this nice drop point here, or actually on the Quantum it's more of like a kind of a Persian-y thing. These things are so flippin' sharp, pun intended. Like, it's hard to, see if I can show it by the mic. Like, I can feel my nail coming off. You can see it on the blade, guys. Look at this. There's pieces of my nail on that blade. Like, it is so sharp. Look at that. You can see it. It just, from the factory, these guys are insanely sharp. And I won't hide it. You will need Band-Aids, guys, if you're going to want to rock one of these. Because I've cut myself so many times. It's not even funny anymore how often it happens. Okay, so I'm half an hour in, and that's great. Sorry about that. I apologize, guys, but I'm just trying to think of what else you guys would want to look at on the handle here. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a Shirogorov. It's a great knife. G10 and multi-row bearing, Quantum, super sharp Chromax PM with a nice inlay and good fit finish. You're gonna love it. So that's it, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Any questions, let me know. Leave the questions below. And I'll always do my best to answer them with anything you have. And we'll go from there. Thanks for stopping by. Cheers, guys.